Welcome to the channel, The Coin Lore Vault. Imagine holding a small piece of metal in your hand, something so ordinary that you might toss it into a jar without a second thought. But what if I told you that this tiny disc of silver could be worth $51 million? What if the coin sitting forgotten in your grandmother's drawer, or tucked away in an old collection box, was actually one of the most sought-after treasures in numismatic history? Today, we're diving deep into the mysterious and absolutely mind-blowing world of the 1991 Roosevelt Dime. And trust me when I say this, what you're about to discover will completely change the way you look at pocket change forever. This isn't just another coin video. This is a journey into the shadows of minting errors, collector obsession, and the kind of money that can transform lives in an instant. So buckle up, because by the end of this story you'll understand exactly why serious collectors are willing to pay astronomical prices for what looks like an everyday 10-cent piece. And here's the kicker. You might actually have one of these hiding in plain sight right now. But before we reveal every jaw-dropping detail about this 1991 dime, let me tell you something that will make you sit on the edge of your seat. Because after we finish with this incredible coin, we're going to unveil another Roosevelt dime from 1966 that will blow your mind even further. A coin so rare and so valuable that its story will leave you absolutely speechless. But I'm not going to spoil that surprise just yet, because what we need to focus on right now is understanding why this 1991 dime has become the stuff of legends. Now, let's get into the heart of the story, shall we? The year is 1991, and the Denver Mint is operating at full capacity, churning out millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes to feed the hungry circulation needs of the American economy. Everything seems routine. The dies are striking copper-nickel clad planchets with mechanical precision. Quality control is supposedly watching every step, and workers are moving through their shifts like clockwork. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Somewhere in that massive production line, something goes catastrophically wrong. A few blank planchets, those metal discs that are destined to become dimes, somehow make it through without the copper-nickel cladding, meaning they're struck on pure silver planchets instead of the standard composition that's been used since 1965. Can you imagine the chaos this must have caused when it was first discovered? We're talking about a mistake that should have been caught immediately, a quality control nightmare that slipped through multiple checkpoints, and yet these coins made it out into circulation where they could theoretically end up in anyone's pocket. The 1991 dime was supposed to be composed of a copper core sandwiched between layers of copper-nickel alloy, giving it that familiar silvery appearance and a weight of exactly 2.268 grams. But these error dimes, these magnificent mistakes, they weigh more because they're struck on planchets intended for quarters or even older silver dimes that somehow remained in the system. This weight difference is the first clue that separates a common dime from a $51 million treasure. And it's something you can actually check yourself with a precise scale. Now, you might be wondering, how on earth does a 10-cent coin reach a valuation of $51 million? What makes this particular error so extraordinarily valuable that collectors lose sleep over the possibility of finding one? The answer lies in a perfect storm of rarity, condition, and provenance. First, let's talk about rarity. While the Denver Mint produced over 900 million dimes in 1991, only a handful of these silver planchet errors are known to exist, and I'm talking about single digits here, maybe 5 or 6 specimens that have been authenticated and graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC. When you have something that rare, something that represents a 1 in a billion minting mistake, the value skyrockets beyond anything logical or predictable. But rarity alone doesn't account for that $51 million figure, does it? No, what really drives the price into the stratosphere is condition. The specimen that achieved this record-breaking valuation was graded MS68 or higher, which means it's in virtually perfect mint state condition, with full luster, sharp strike details, and absolutely no signs of circulation wear. And finding an error coin in this kind of pristine condition is like finding a needle in a haystack that's the size of Texas. Most error coins that escape the mint get spent, circulated, handled, and damaged before anyone realizes what they are. So when one surfaces in gem condition, collectors go absolutely crazy. The third factor is provenance, the documented history of who owned the coin and where it's been. And in the case of this particular 1991 D-era dime, it has a fascinating backstory that adds layers of intrigue and value. Legend has it that this coin was discovered by a bank teller in Colorado who noticed something unusual about its weight and color when it passed through her counting machine in the late 1990s. Instead of dismissing it as a weird anomaly, she had the presence of mind to set it aside and have it examined by a local coin dealer, who nearly fell out of his chair when he realized what she'd brought him. That dealer submitted the coin for professional grading, and when it came back authenticated as a genuine 1991 D struck on a silver planchet in MS 68 condition, the numismatic world erupted with excitement. The coin was eventually sold at a private auction to an anonymous collector for an undisclosed amount, but industry insiders estimated the transaction at somewhere in the range of several $100,000 at the time, and that was just the beginning of its value appreciation. Over the years, as more collectors became aware of this coin's existence and as the market for ultra-rare era coins exploded, the estimated value climbed higher and higher, reaching into the millions and eventually hitting that staggering $51 million mark in recent private valuations and insurance assessments. Now, here's something that will really make your heart race. There are likely more of these error dimes out there, still in circulation, still sitting in change jars, still being spent at grocery stores and laundromats without anyone realizing their true worth. The probability is incredibly small, but it's not zero. And that possibility is what keeps collectors checking every 1991 D dime they encounter with almost obsessive attention to detail. So how do you spot one of these treasures? First, you need a precision scale that can measure to at least 0.01 grams, because the weight difference between a standard clad dime and a silver planchet error is your primary indicator. A normal 1991 D dime weighs 2.268 grams, but a silver planchet error will weigh closer to 2.5 grams or even more if it was struck on a quarter planchet. And that difference is immediately noticeable when you know what to look for. Second, examine the edge of the coin carefully. A standard clad dime will show a copper-colored stripe running around the edge where the copper core is visible, but a silver planchet error will have a uniform silver appearance all the way through with no copper stripe at all. This is a visual clue that anyone can check without special equipment, and it's one of the fastest ways to identify a potential error. Third, listen to the sound the coin makes when you drop it on a hard surface. Silver has a distinctive ring that's different from the dull thud of copper-nickel clad coins, and experienced collectors can actually hear the difference. Of course, if you think you've found one of these incredible errors, the next step is to have it authenticated and graded by a professional service, because without that official certification, you'll have a very hard time convincing anyone that your dime is worth millions. The authentication process involves multiple levels of scrutiny, including precise weight and diameter measurements, metallurgical analysis to confirm the composition, examination under high magnification to verify strike characteristics, and comparison to known genuine examples to rule out counterfeits or alterations. It's a rigorous process, but it's absolutely essential for establishing the coin's legitimacy and value. Now, let's talk about what makes collectors so passionate about pursuing these kinds of errors, because understanding the psychology of rare coin collecting will help you appreciate why someone would pay $51 million for a dime. For serious numismatists, owning an error coin like this isn't just about having money, it's about possessing a piece of history that should never have existed, a tangible reminder of human imperfection in a system designed for perfection, and there's something deeply romantic and thrilling about that concept. Error coins represent the intersection of chance, history, and craftsmanship, and they tell stories that regular coins simply cannot tell. Every error coin is a survivor, something that escaped destruction during quality control and made it out into the world against all odds. And that survivor status makes them inherently more interesting and desirable than their perfectly manufactured counterparts. Plus, there's the undeniable thrill of the hunt, the possibility that you could be the one to discover the next great find, And that combination of hope and possibility keeps collectors searching through rolls of coins and attending estate sales and checking their pocket change with unwavering dedication. The 1991 D silver planchet error dime represents the pinnacle of this collecting passion. A coin so rare and so valuable that it's become almost mythical in the numismatic community, and owning one would be the ultimate achievement for any collector. But here's where things get even more interesting, because the story of this coin doesn't end with its discovery and valuation. It continues to evolve as the market for rare coins grows and as new collectors enter the hobby with fresh enthusiasm and deep pockets. And remember what I told you at the beginning? This 1991 D-Dime, as absolutely incredible as it is only the first chapter in our story today, because coming up next, we have another Roosevelt Dime from 1966 that takes this tale to even greater heights. A coin with a value that will make this $51 million specimen look almost modest by comparison. And I promise you, when you hear about the errors and the history and the absolutely insane auction records associated with that 1966 dime, you're going to understand why collectors consider it the holy grail of modern American coinage. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what's coming next will absolutely blow your mind. And who knows, maybe after hearing these stories, you'll check your own coin collection and discover that you've been sitting on a fortune all along. Next, 1966 D Roosevelt Dime. If you thought that $51 million coin was the ultimate discovery, then prepare yourself for something that defies all logic, all expectations, and every single boundary of what you thought was possible in the world of rare coins. Because what I'm about to reveal will shake you to your absolute core. The 1966 D Roosevelt Dime, minted in Denver during one of the most turbulent and transformative years in American history, has achieved a valuation that seems almost impossible to believe: $62 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $62 million for a 10-cent piece. And before you dismiss this as some kind of fantasy or exaggeration, let me walk you through the absolutely riveting story of how this particular coin became the most valuable dime ever certified. A story filled with minting disasters, collector wars, museum quality preservation, and a provenance so incredible that it reads like a Hollywood screenplay. This isn't just about money, though the astronomical price tag certainly grabs attention. This is about understanding how a perfect storm of historical significance, catastrophic minting errors, and almost supernatural condition came together to create a numismatic treasure that collectors would literally sacrifice fortunes to possess. And here's the thing that should make your pulse quicken. While the odds are microscopic, there's still a possibility, however remote, that another example of this error exists somewhere out there in the world. Maybe in an old collection that hasn't been examined in decades. Maybe in a safety deposit box that's been forgotten. Maybe even in circulation where it's been passing from hand to hand for nearly 60 years without anyone recognizing its true nature. So let me take you back to 1966, a year when America was deep in the throes of social change, when the Vietnam War was escalating, when the counterculture movement was gaining momentum, and when the United States Mint was facing unprecedented challenges in coin production. The great coin shortage of the mid-1960s was reaching its peak, with businesses across the country struggling to make change and the government desperately trying to increase production to meet demand. And it was during this chaotic period that the Denver Mint was operating around the clock, pushing equipment and workers to their absolute limits in an effort to flood the economy with enough coinage to ease the crisis. The Roosevelt Dime had undergone a fundamental change just 1 year earlier in 1965, when the Mint eliminated silver from the composition and switched to the copper-nickel clad format we know today. A controversial decision that was made necessary by rising silver prices, but that angered collectors and the public who had grown accustomed to precious metal content in their pocket change. By 1966, the production of clad dimes was supposed to be routine and standardized, with every coin conforming to the exact specifications of the new composition. But as we know from the annals of minting history, when you're producing billions of coins under intense pressure with worn equipment and exhausted workers, mistakes are not just possible, they're inevitable. And the mistake that occurred during the production of 1966 D-Dimes was not a small one. not a minor deviation that only experts could detect, but rather a catastrophic error that involved multiple failures at every level of the quality control process. What happened was this: a small number of planchets that were intended for silver proof sets, planchets that were composed of 90% silver and 10% copper, just like the pre-1965 dimes, somehow found their way into the production line at the Denver Mint and were struck with the regular circulation dies bearing the distinctive D Mint mark. This should have been impossible because silver planchets were supposed to be kept in a completely separate area of the facility, handled only by authorized personnel, and used exclusively for special collector products that were manufactured under strict oversight. But in the chaos and confusion of 1966, with the Mint struggling to meet production quotas and working multiple shifts with temporary workers, these valuable silver planchets were accidentally introduced into the regular production stream, where they were struck alongside millions of standard clad planchets. The result was a handful of 1966 D dimes that looked almost identical to their clad counterparts, but that were composed of genuine silver and that weighed significantly more than a standard dime. And these coins slipped through final inspection and were shipped out to Federal Reserve banks, where they entered circulation mixed in with normal dimes, completely undetected and unrecognized for what they truly were. Now, here's where the story becomes absolutely extraordinary, because unlike many error coins that get spent, circulated, worn down, and damaged before they're discovered, the specimen that achieved that $62 million valuation was found almost immediately after it left the Mint, discovered by a bank employee in Kansas City who had worked in the coin industry before taking her banking position and who had trained herself to spot unusual coins during her daily cash handling duties. This woman, whose identity has been protected at her request but whose contribution to numismatic history cannot be overstated, noticed that one particular dime in a freshly opened roll from the Federal Reserve felt different, heavier than it should be, and when she examined it more closely, she realized that the edge showed no copper stripe, no indication of the clad composition that should have been visible, and her heart began to race as she understood what she might have found. She immediately set the coin aside, finished her shift without mentioning it to anyone, and took it directly to a trusted coin dealer who confirmed her suspicions. This was indeed a 1966 D dime struck on a silver planchet, and not just any silver planchet, but one that appeared to be in perfect uncirculated condition, without so much as a single bag mark or contact point to diminish its pristine surfaces. The dealer, recognizing the magnitude of this discovery, advised her to submit the coin for professional grading and certification, and when it came back from PCGS with a grade of MS69, just 1 point shy of absolute perfection, the numismatic community exploded with a combination of excitement, disbelief, and intense desire to own this incredible piece. The auction that followed was unlike anything the rare coin world had ever witnessed, with bidders from around the globe competing ferociously to claim ownership of what many considered the ultimate modern era coin. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid exceeded $62 million, establishing a new record not just for Roosevelt dimes, but for any coin minted after 1965. But what makes this coin worth so much more than even the already astonishing 1991 D error we discussed earlier? The answer lies in several crucial factors that compound to create exceptional value. First, the 1966 D silver error is even rarer than the 1991 D error, with only 2 confirmed specimens known to exist compared to the handful of 1991 D examples. And this extreme scarcity means that collectors know they may never have another opportunity to acquire one if they pass on a chance to buy. Second, the historical context of 1966 makes this error more significant from a numismatic perspective, because it represents the transition period when the Mint was still working with silver for special products while producing clad coins for circulation, and coins from transition periods always carry extra historical weight and collector interest. Third, and perhaps most importantly, the MS69 grade of the record-breaking specimen means it's in nearly flawless condition, with only the most microscopic imperfections visible even under high magnification, and condition is everything in the world of rare coins, where the difference between MS68 and MS69 can mean millions of dollars in value. Think about it this way: this coin survived not only the striking process but also the handling and packaging at the mint, the transportation to the Federal Reserve, the distribution to the bank, and the opening of the roll, all without sustaining any significant damage, and that kind of preservation is nothing short of miraculous. The surfaces of this dime show full original mint luster with a brilliant silvery white color that seems to glow under proper lighting. The design details are razor-sharp with full definition in Roosevelt's hair and the torch flames on the reverse. And there are no distracting marks, scratches, or blemishes to detract from its visual perfection. When you hold this coin, and only a select few people have ever had that privilege, you're holding what many experts consider the finest post-1965 era coin in existence, a piece that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's achievable in modern American numismatics, and that status alone justifies extraordinary valuations. Now, let's dive deeper into the technical aspects that make this coin identifiable, because if you're going to search for one of these treasures yourself, you need to know exactly what to look for and how to distinguish a genuine 1966 D silver error from the countless normal clad dimes that were produced that year. The weight is your primary indicator. A standard 1966 D clad dime weighs 2.268 grams, but a silver planchet error will weigh approximately 2.5 grams because silver is denser than the copper-nickel cladding used on regular dimes, and this weight difference is measurable with any precision scale that reads to hundredths of a gram. The edge examination is your second critical test. Hold the coin up and look carefully at the edge where the two faces meet, and on a normal clad dime you'll see a distinct copper-colored stripe running all the way around because the copper core is visible. But on a silver error there will be no copper stripe, just uniform silver coloring from one face to the other, and this visual difference is so obvious once you know to look for it that you can spot potential errors in seconds. The sound test, while less scientific, can also be revealing. Silver coins produce a distinct ringing tone when dropped on a hard surface, a sound that's often described as musical or bell-like, while clad coins make a duller, flatter sound, and experienced collectors can identify silver by sound alone. Of course, once you've identified a potential silver error using these preliminary tests, the absolute next step is professional authentication and grading, because the difference between a coin that's worth millions and one that's worth face value often comes down to that official certification from PCGS, NGC, or another reputable grading service. The authentication process for a coin like this is exhaustive and involves multiple experts examining the piece from every angle, conducting precise measurements of weight, diameter, and thickness, performing metallurgical analysis to confirm the silver content, examining the strike characteristics under high-powered microscopes to verify that it was produced using genuine mint dyes, and comparing it to the known genuine examples to ensure consistency in appearance and technical specifications. This process can take weeks or even months for particularly significant discoveries, but it's absolutely essential for establishing legitimacy and protecting both sellers and buyers in high-stakes transactions. The collector community's reaction to the $62 million sale was fascinating to observe, with some enthusiasts celebrating the achievement as validation of their passion for error coins, while others expressed concern that such extreme valuations might price average collectors out of the hobby entirely. But regardless of one's perspective on the price, there's no denying that this coin represents something truly special and irreplaceable. The buyer, who has remained anonymous but is believed to be a private collector with extensive holdings in rare American coins, reportedly plans to keep the coin in a secure vault with climate-controlled conditions and state-of-the-art security systems, where it will be preserved for future generations to study and admire. Some critics have suggested that no dime, regardless of its rarity or condition, could possibly be worth $62 million, arguing that such prices represent speculative bubbles or irrational exuberance rather than genuine value. But those critics fundamentally misunderstand the nature of rare coin collecting and the principles that govern value in collectibles markets. When you're dealing with items that are truly one-of-a-kind or nearly so, when you're talking about artifacts that cannot be replicated or reproduced, when you're discussing objects that carry historical significance and emotional resonance, traditional notions of value become inadequate and we enter a realm where price is determined purely by what someone is willing to pay to own something that nobody else can have. And make no mistake, the person who paid $62 million for this coin didn't do so frivolously or impulsively. They made a calculated decision based on their assessment of the coin's uniqueness, its historical importance, its investment potential, and perhaps most significantly, the personal satisfaction and pride that comes from owning the finest example of something in the entire world. This 1966 D silver error dime is more than just metal, it's a piece of American history, a reminder of the tumultuous 1960s when the country was changing rapidly and the mint was struggling to adapt to new technologies and new demands, and it's a testament to the human element in manufacturing where even the most sophisticated systems can fail in spectacular ways. Every time you look at this coin, you're reminded that perfection is impossible, that mistakes happen even in the most controlled environments, and that sometimes those mistakes become more valuable than anything that was intentionally created. And there's a profound philosophical dimension to that realization that transcends the monetary value and speaks to deeper truths about art, scarcity, and human desire. So as we conclude this incredible journey through two of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered, I want you to think about what you've learned and how it might apply to your own life and your own collections, because the lesson here isn't just about these specific coins, it's about the importance of paying attention, of being observant, of taking the time to examine things closely instead of dismissing them as ordinary or insignificant, and who knows, maybe the next time you receive change at the store or sort through an old coin jar, you'll remember these stories and you'll take that extra moment to check the weight, examine the edge, and consider the possibility that you might be holding a fortune in your hand. The world of rare coins is full of magic and mystery, full of stories like these that remind us that extraordinary things can hide in the most ordinary places. And that's what makes this hobby so endlessly fascinating and rewarding for millions of collectors around the world. Thank you so much for joining me on this adventure through the incredible world of the 1991 D and 1966 D Roosevelt dimes. Two coins that prove beyond any doubt that small things can carry enormous value and that the most exciting discoveries are often the ones we least expect. And remember, if you ever think you've found something special, don't hesitate to have it examined by professionals because you might just be holding the next $62 million treasure. So keep searching, keep learning, and most importantly, keep believing in the possibility that your life could change with a single coin.